You know, when we think of legendary warriors, we picture them on the battlefield, right? Swords drawn, absolutely fearless. But what if their most brutal fights? What if the real war wasn't against armies at all, but the one waged inside their own minds? Well, today we're diving deep into those secret battles. I mean, we've all heard the stories, right? The epic victories, the statues built in their honor. But have you ever stopped to think about what happened after the cheering died down, after the crowds went home, when it was just them, alone with their thoughts? That, right there, is the story we're getting into today. And this is really the heart of it all. On one side, you've got the legend, the version that's etched into our history books. You know, invincible, fearless, almost like a god. But then on the other side, there's the human reality. A person, just like you and me, wrestling with doubt, with conflict, and carrying these immense burdens. So here's the big idea we're exploring. Their toughest tests? They weren't always about outsmarting an enemy on the battlefield. Nope. It was about facing down their own inner demons, navigating these impossible moral choices, and just grappling with what it means to be human. That's where real heroism is forged. Okay, so to really get this, let's start by stepping into the mind of a commander. Let's try to feel that immense, just crushing weight of leadership and think about the invisible scars that come from holding the fate of thousands, literally thousands of people in your hands. I mean, just think about someone like Alexander the Great, a guy who never lost a single battle, or the strategic genius Sun Tzu, whose work we still study today. From the outside, their power looks absolute, their decisions seem flawless, right? But that kind of authority, it doesn't come for free. Oh no, it carries a heavy, heavy personal price. And this right here, this shows you that price perfectly. It's like the higher you climb, the more alone you are. Just imagine being Alexander. Every single advisor could be a rival. Every friend could be a threat. And you know, historical accounts tell us this wasn't just some character flaw. It was a straight-up survival mechanism. Because really, who can you trust when you're on top of the world? And get this, these weren't just quiet, private anxieties. This stuff directly shaped their military strategy, their political alliances. It shaped the very course of history. What was happening inside their head became everyone else's reality. So all that internal pressure of command, it often forces a leader into this next really critical zone, a warrior's conscience. We're talking about those gut-wrenching moments when doing the right thing and doing the necessary thing are two completely different and often opposing paths. You can almost break this dilemma down into 3 steps. First, boom, a fateful order comes down, or a situation pops up that you just can't ignore. Then, that kicks off a massive internal moral conflict. And finally, you have to make a choice. And that one choice, it can end up defining everything about you. And man, you see this terrible choice play out time and time again in history. You've got Achilles, the greatest warrior of his generation, literally forced to choose between his own wounded pride and his duty to save his comrades. Or think about Joan of Arc, facing the ultimate test, her unshakable faith in God versus the condemnation of pretty much her entire world. Just incredible pressure. And what's fascinating is that these choices, they tap into these really deep philosophical debates. Do you go the Stoic route, where duty is everything no matter what? Or do you take a more utilitarian path, where the greater good might mean sacrificing honor? For these warriors, this wasn't some classroom debate. This was a life or death decision made in the heat of the moment. But okay, what happens after the choice is made? After the battle is won? Well, that's when we get to the aftermath and the real price of victory. A price that isn't paid in gold or land, but in psychological wounds that can stick with you for a lifetime. And it doesn't matter who we're talking about here. It could be the incredibly disciplined samurai in feudal Japan or the fierce Vikings raiding across the sea. The truth is the same. For a warrior, the battle, it never really ends. It just moves from the field into their mind. And these are the echoes of that internal battle. It's the trauma that comes back in the quiet moments. It's that crushing, soul-crushing weight of survivor's guilt. The grief for friends you've lost that just never ever goes away. At the end of the day, it completely transforms how you see life and death itself. Now, here's a really important point. Talking about the suffering, acknowledging it, that doesn't make their legends any smaller. In fact, I think it makes their heroism even more profound. It shows us they weren't just unfeeling machines of war. They were human beings who kept going, who persevered, in spite of carrying unimaginable pain. Okay, so with all of that in mind, maybe it's time we redefine what it means to be a legend. Let's look into those unseen depths of what makes a hero. And this table really lays it all out, doesn't it? You have Alexander, the undefeated conqueror to the public, but inside he's battling crippling isolation and paranoia. Achilles, the greatest warrior, struggling with pride versus duty. The samurai, this icon of unwavering discipline, secretly carrying the heavy burden of trauma and guilt. The public story is only ever half the picture. So their true legacies, they're really two-sided. They're defined just as much by the internal demons they had to fight as they are by the empires they built. Just as much by the moral tightropes they walked as by the battles they won. And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. We tend to measure these legendary figures by the lands they conquered or the armies they smashed. But what if their greatest victory, the one that truly made them legends, was conquering themselves? Just something to think about. Thanks for diving into this with me.